American Made, Hollywood versus reality.
I was working for the CIA, the DEA, and
Pablo Escobar.
Coming up. Hey 7-4 crew, welcome back. If you don't know me, my name's Kelsey. I'm a 747 pilot. My channel, 7-4 Gear, is all about aviation. Today I'm here in Los Angeles, California, and this is the view from my hotel room. The very first Hollywood versus reality movie that I made was actually American Made. But it was so terrible, it reminded me of my first landing. I really enjoy American Made, and I couldn't stand watching that video. I really disliked it. It's the only video that I've ever taken down, but I just had to redo it because I enjoyed the movie so much. But just because I enjoyed the movie doesn't mean it's safe from a Hollywood versus reality. So, let's get into it.
Deck. Just a little bit of turbulence.
So this movie is based on real events, and I don't know if the pilot in real life did these things that Tom Cruise is portraying in the movie, but this is definitely not something you can easily do with a large aircraft. It's very, very hard to simulate turbulence. I've seen in movies where they have the turbulence button and on memes where they have the turbulence button, but it's very hard with these jets of these size to really simulate turbulence. That's not something you could very easily do. The second thing is you see the first officer asleep. I have never fallen asleep, nor have I ever seen anybody fall asleep on a 15-hour flight across the ocean in the middle of the night, because that would be a big no-no.
I would never do that.
But you would definitely notice if something like the autopilot clicked off and you heard that alarm, or the thrust lever moved up and you heard the engines rev up. Those are things that would definitely wake you up. The best way that I can explain this is I've hung out with friends that have kids, and when we're just talking, hanging out, and there's TVs on and we're laughing, and then they'll be like, hold on a second. And they'll be like, hold on, the baby's crying. And I'm thinking, how did you even hear that? I didn't even hear anything that would maybe be a baby sound. But if you're a parent out there, you know that over all these different noises, your brain is tuned to hear whatever pitch a baby cries at, but your body is tuned to hear those things. I don't hear them. So doesn't really alert me. I remember staying with a friend of mine where I was staying in the room right next to where the baby was staying, and their room was way down the hall. And they said, man, I hope I didn't wake you up last night. The baby woke up like 4 times crying. I thought, no, I didn't even wake up once. But that's the easiest way that I can explain it to you. If you're a parent, you know, you hear that baby crying, you know instantly it's time to get up. So that seems pretty Hollywood, but let's see what the next scene looks like.
I hope they put us up at the Holiday Inn tonight. Those little cocktail gals are on fire. As soon as they see a man in uniform, pennies come off.
Okay, hold on. I just had to pause this one really quick. There has never been a situation where I've heard some pilots talking and going, man, I really hope they put us at the Holiday Inn tonight. And there's nothing wrong with that hotel, but generally there are much nicer hotels to stay at. Even within the Holiday Inn brand, there's much nicer hotels. So that is not something you will ever hear two pilots talking about. We do talk about, man, I hope we stay at this hotel or things like that, but it's just not the Holiday Inn. The other thing is he's talking about panties coming off. Now, this is in the 70s, and it was definitely a different era for pilots back then. Being a pilot was very prestigious, and that probably did work. Now, it doesn't work like that, especially in the US and some other countries. Now, there are places overseas where I go in uniform, and you get a lot of respect, but it's definitely not like it was back in the 70s of free love and all of that, and being a pilot was really cool. It was just kind of a perfect storm. So for all of you that are planning on becoming pilots in the future, just don't expect that to be happening at the Holiday Inn when you go there on a layover. Okay, let's get back to the movie. I'm far from a weapons expert, but I'm pretty sure that that was a 50 cal anti-aircraft gun that was shooting at Tom Cruise's plane. If it was that weapon that hit the engine, that would rip that engine apart. So that's pretty Hollywood. Next, you see that Tom Cruise starts to descend in altitude after he loses that engine, on purpose, it looks like. Now, if you were to lose an engine on a typical commercial aircraft that you fly on, those aircraft have a climb performance, meaning they're going to be able to climb away from the ground even on one engine. And that second engine is really for safety and redundancy. However, in a small aircraft like this, you don't have those assurances. I flew a very similar aircraft to the one in this movie way back in early on in my career, and you could, in some situations, if you were very heavy, and I don't know what his weight is in this situation, but if you're very heavy, you're not always going to be able to climb. And in some cases, the plane is going to descend even if you have full power on the other engine. So you wouldn't purposely descend because you may not be able to get back up again. Another Hollywood thing that you see here is that he's trying to restart the engine. Now, you wouldn't restart the engine when you see the oil pressure and everything. You saw that oil coming out, that oil pressure is falling. You know that that engine is dead. So you wouldn't really be spending any time trying to restart it. You would try to secure it, which means to shut it down and be worried about flying. Something that is very accurate is you see him moving that wheel. That's called the rudder trim. If you have a 2 or more engine aircraft, you'll have thrust coming off of one side and not the other. So the plane's not balanced out. That rudder trim will help your aircraft fly straight, so that's something that is accurate that you would do in that scenario. Now, if you're not a pilot, you don't quite understand what I mean by the rudder trim, the best way I can explain it is this. If you have your typical car, the engine drives 2 tires, or 4, but let's just say 2 in this scenario. Let's say your 2 front tires are getting driven by the engine. But if you stop driving one of those tires, your car would want to go to the right or go to the left. Whichever tire is getting the pressure, it would push the car the other direction. So it's kind of the same for the plane. In this case, you have 2 engines that are pulling you forward. When you lose one, it's creating drag, and the other one's pushing you forward. So the plane's wanting to turn, and that is not very easy to fly that way. So by using that rudder trim, it balances it out. So imagine using it so that way the tire on your right side that was getting the power was trying to drive to the right more than it normally did. That would allow your car to go more straight. That's kind of the idea behind rudder trim in this scenario. All right, let's get back to American Made.
I said no more. No más. No más. No más. No más.
But there's plenty of room, gringo. No, sí, hasta arriba.
Guys, it ain't about room, all right? It's about weight. Now, we agreed on 200. I even put on 300.
No, Barry, eso le cabe más hasta arriba.
No más. No más.
I want to pause it right here because what he's doing is actually super important. And for any of you new pilots or future pilots, this is a very important lesson to learn. He's already overweight. He's taken on more than he had originally agreed upon. So he's probably flying overweight for the aircraft. But what you see him doing is saying, I'm not going to take any more. That's very important to know when the line is drawn and to not exceed it and hold your integrity. There have been instances of planes crashing because they've been overweight because the pilot failed to draw that line in the sand. So you see that Barry Seal, the guy that Tom Cruise is portraying in this movie, is saying, hey, listen, this is the limit. I'm not going to take any more. And he's not bending to their pressure. That's very good, and that's a great lesson for any of you that are planning to be pilots. It's very important. An accident that comes to mind is way back, I think, in the early 2000s, Aaliyah. She was a singer, and she crashed. Allegedly, and I don't know if this is true, but they put too much weight on the aircraft. The aircraft was way overweight. And so they ended up crashing into the ocean. That was one of several factors, and I read a lot of the different crash investigations from that, but that was one of several different factors. Because the pilot got pushed into taking more than he felt comfortable taking. And they exceeded the weight limit of the plane, and the plane was unable to climb, and it ended up crashing into the ocean, and sadly everybody died. So as a pilot, you really have to know, hey, this is the line, and I'm not going to cross it. It's a very important lesson to learn, so I want you to keep that in mind in the future. If you decide to become a pilot, know and hold that line. It's your life, it's your license, it's your career, it's your passenger's life, your crew's life. It's very important that you know, hey, this is a rule, I'm not going to bend it, and that's a really good lesson to learn. All right, let's get back to the movie.
Oh, whoa. Where the hell you think you're going, big fella? Come on, out.
Either I fly the big fella, or I fly your product.
Good luck, hermano. Christ will keep you safe.
I ain't gonna make this runway any longer. Hey, Rory. Give me that.
So I want to explain a couple things that are happening here. He says it's not going to make the runway any longer. The reason that is relevant is because they're in the mountains of Colombia. At those higher altitudes, the air is thinner. That thinner air means the aircraft is going to have a harder time getting up in the air, and you're going to want to gain as much speed as you possibly can. Now, I've never flown this plane in particular, but when they scrolled back, it looked like a relatively long runway for me to be able to get off the ground in a small aircraft like that. But I don't know exactly what it was like in real life. Something Hollywood in this scene, though, is you see Tom Cruise add power and this start rolling. What you would do in real life is you would stomp on the brakes and hold the brakes until the engines were fully revved up and ready to go. It takes a couple seconds for once you apply the power for the engines to get revved up, and you wouldn't want to waste that time accelerating while letting the engine speed up. You'd want to get them to full power, keep your feet on the brakes, and then let go. And that is going to get you off the ground as quickly as possible. I'm hoping as I'm saying these things that people aren't going to use this as a documentary to become drug runners, but I'm just explaining what is actual and what you would do in real life in these scenarios. All right, let's get back to the movie. That buzzing noise that you heard when he was trying to take off is a stall warning. What that means is the wings aren't getting enough air over them and that it may end up stalling, which means you're going to fall out of the sky. Now, I have had it happen when I've taken off at very high altitudes in a small aircraft. I've heard that noise before when I'm taking off. And it's a very uncomfortable feeling, but I ended up taking off and flying anyways because I knew what was going on and I understood the concepts and I understood the airspeed and everything that was going on. You just have to be a little bit more gentle till you pick up speed. So that's what that noise was. The other thing that you saw him do is you saw him take the landing gear up. Now typically you're not going to take up the landing gear up just that close to the ground. But at a certain speed he realized he's going to have to take off or he's going to end up in the trees. So by getting the gear up, you reduce the drag on the aircraft, and that will help you obviously fly faster because the gear isn't going to help you and going into the trees is going to be bad either way. So by bringing up the gear, he's increasing his chances of getting above those trees. The obvious question that I have here is, can a plane fly through a bunch of trees? Now, I'm going to give it a pass because the reality is I've seen planes fly with a bunch of bullet holes in them. So could it fly through some trees? I don't know. I would not want to try it, but I'm guessing really that it probably could get through some level of branches and trees. I don't know if it could go through like what it's showing in here, but the reality is that it could go through a set of branches and still probably keep flying. So we'll give that a pass. All right, let's get back to the movie.
You see this?
This is the United States Drug Enforcement Administration.
You were in violation of the Air Defense Identification Zone. We are ordering you to land immediately.
Follow us to New Orleans, NAS.
All right, boys. It'll be a long night. Go back out to sea, 105 knots. Get them flaps down.
I repeat, we are ordering you to land immediately.
The DEA was using these fancy new jets that we couldn't outrun.
Follow us to New Orleans, NAS.
But all that speed comes at a heavy price.
I repeat.
They could go fast,
NAS.
but we could go slow. For a long time.
Low, few
turn around, guys. We're bingo.
Fuel. Those pricks are right there. Low fuel.
Hi, boys. DEA finally ran out of gas. Time to head home.
Bill! The fuck, man? Where you headed, buddy? Come on.
All right, I'll get him. I'll get him. Bill! Come on, turn around. Come on, let's go. Bill? You hear me? Oh, son of a bitch. Bill's asleep.
God damn.
Bill, wake up, man.
Bill!
Morning, Bill.
Okay, look,
Welcome back.
Do you hear that plane say you're in violation of the Air Defense Identification Zone?
You were in violation of the Air Defense Identification Zone.
Pilots call that the ADIZ. It's kind of an invisible line around the outside of the U.S. that you're not allowed to fly into unless you've received clearance to fly into that airspace. It's the border, basically, of the sky. So I'm guessing, being a drug runner, you're not going to be filing flight plans and things like that. So it makes sense if you were to try to fly in, you would actually get caught because they're going to be able to see you on radar like that. So that part is very accurate. The one thing that stuck out in my mind the most as being very Hollywood, though, is that Tom Cruise says, let's go back out at 105 knots and put our flaps down.
Go back out to sea, 105 knots. Get that flaps down. Repeat.
Obviously, they're trying to fly slow and run that jet out of gas. You'd be much more fuel efficient, though, to fly at a little bit of a faster speed without the flaps out. Those flaps create drag. It allows you to fly slower, but you're just flying in circles over the ocean, so it doesn't really matter. You would want to conserve fuel as much as possible, so you wouldn't put the flaps down. You would fly just at what we call a clean configuration, and you would fly in that clean configuration as long as possible until the jet ran out of gas, and then you would continue on to your destination. So that part is definitely Hollywood. The next thing I want to explain is the pilot says we're bingo.
You gotta turn around, guys. We're bingo.
What that means is that's a fuel where you have to make a decision and do something. In this scenario, that bingo fuel means this is the time where we have to head back to our base. In the airlines, you might have a bingo fuel number, which means you have to make a decision to go to your alternate airport or do something. It's a fuel number where you have to make a decision and you will have planned that out ahead of time. In this case, it's a daytime flying. It's not a big deal. They can fly right back to their base. It's not an issue. In the airlines, you might be holding over an airport, and when you hit that bingo fuel number, that means you have to go to your alternate airport. And that allows you the fuel to get safely to your alternate airport and have a little bit of extra just in case you mess up on the first or second try. That's actually very accurate and something that we still use today. Now, could a pilot flying by himself fall asleep? I actually know a guy who got in trouble for doing this on multiple occasions. He would fall asleep while he was flying, and he actually had some passengers report him. It was actually in a smaller aircraft like this, so he actually got reported by people because they could see that his head was nodding as he was flying. And it was a daytime flight, but I don't know, he liked to sleep when he was flying. So that is real. That could happen in real life. As far as for Tom coming up and hitting the wings, these aircraft were built a lot more strong than what you have now. There's a lot of carbon fiber aircraft and things like that. I think it would be very dangerous to smash or tap on the wing of somebody like that in flight. But back in this day, with the way these planes were made, I think you could probably do it. I don't know that I personally would want to try it, but I think in this scenario, you could probably tap his wing and wake him up. So in my opinion, that's actually very accurate. The thing is that you would want to make sure you do just a gentle tap, kind of like that captain said in Madagascar 2.
Gently now, you just want to kiss the ground. Just a little peck, a smooch like you're kissing your sister.
Okay, let's get back to the movie.
Eurostar 2193 Golf. Head for New Orleans Naval Air Station 1.
Yeah, come on, come on, come on.
You better run, you prick.
This is the United States Border Patrol.
Shit.
We are ordering you to land.
Hey, boys. See, you finally got smart and got a slower plane.
That's right, son. Wait up here as long as you want. repeat, we are ordering you to land at... What the f***? Stay on him.
I like the scene where he says, "We'll stay up here as long as you want." I don't know why I like that so much.
Wait up here as long as you want.
Something very accurate in the scene though is the way that Tom Cruise loses altitude. Your typical wings are obviously designed to push you up and keep you away from the ground. By turning the plane on its side though, the plane doesn't have that typical lift from the wings to push itself up, and the plane is able to basically knife edge down and lose altitude very quickly. So that's an accurate maneuver that you would do in an aircraft like this in this situation. Your typical airline pilot would not do that, but when you're running from people, you would do that. Still another movie without fuel in the wings. I'm sure one of these days there's going to be a movie where the wing is going to come off and fuel is going to come out. It didn't happen in Batman, it didn't happen in James Bond, it hasn't happened in this one, but one day in one of these movies, fuel is going to come out, and I think you're going to know who to thank. If you want to see another movie where fuel is not coming out of the wings, it's the James Bond Hollywood vs. Reality that I just did. If you haven't seen that, I'll put a link to it right here. I look forward to hearing from you. Until then, keep the blue side up.